What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. Now today I wanted to bring to you a card discussion on Dimensional Barrier, probably the most hyped card out of Invasion Vengeance, and at the time of making this video is demanding a $70 price tag. So I kind of wanted to delve into this card and really discuss, why this card is demanding such an outrageous price and is it really worth the hype. So Dimensional Barrier is a normal trap card, and the effect reads, upon activation, you declare one card type, being either Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Pendulum. And for the rest of that turn that the card is activated, neither player can special summon monsters of the given type, and the effects of those monsters on the field are negated. And you can only activate one Dimensional Barrier per turn, thank fucking God. So, going into this card, a lot of people can pretty much see why this card would be really, really good. Mainly because it's like another copy of Vanity's Emptiness, but it's not just another copy of Vanity's Emptiness, it's actually more like your second, third, and fourth copies of Vanity's Emptiness, because this card isn't limited to one. Now, it's not directly Vanity's Emptiness, because, Vanity's Emptiness, as we all know, stops special summoning entirely, but Dimensional Barrier is very comparable because a lot of the top decks, or a lot of decks kind of in general, kind of rely on one specific type of summoning from either the extra deck or the main deck if we're going to be talking about ritual summoning. So, why this is so good is while it doesn't stop the effect monsters themselves from being special summoned, you can stop so many other different types of monsters that are pretty much going to be considered the problem monsters of whatever matchup you're facing. So for example, for Ritual, if you're going up against any Herald deck, or any deck using the Cyber Angels, or Necros for some reason, like, if you flip this and call Ritual, their turn pretty much fucking ends because they can't do any more summoning for the rest of the turn, and they pretty much wasted one of the ritual spells because you're more than likely going to just chain this in response because it's very similar to Vanity's Emptiness in that aspect. Moving on to Fusion, Metal Foes are a very somewhat fusion-reliant deck when you got cards like Mithrilium and Alcahest and all these other cards, which are kind of their best cards. The deck also does utilize, Xyz monsters as well, but that's where the flexibility of Dimensional Barrier comes in and can carry its weight in that matchup, because depending on what you see your opponent wanting to accomplish, you can flip it, call either Fusion or Xyz in that instance, and then pretty much their turn's gonna come to a halt. Hell, you can even call Pendulum if you want, if the Pendulum monsters themselves are actually causing you trouble. And yeah, that's pretty much like, it just shuts them down for the turn completely. Moving on to Synchro, Blue Eyes is a deck that probably, in the current format, best utilizes the Synchro mechanic outside of something like Dark Synchro as well. And that's just incredible because since both of those decks rely so much on Synchro summoning into cards like Spirit Dragon, Psyframe Lord Omega, you just flip Dimensional Barrier, their turn basically ends, they're going to try to create some sort of defensive presence, but more than likely you're going to be able to OTK them on your next turn anyway, because usually that one turn, especially with how crazy fast the format is, one turn is all you need. And obviously, I don't really need to go into Xyz too much because Xyz is probably one of the most popular extra deck mechanics there is because it's all the extra deck monsters are just incredibly powerful. I could just make an entire list of how many decks use Xyz monsters, and I would be here for a really long time. So, Burning Abyss, PK Fire, I already said Metal Foes, ABCs with the rank 4 toolbox, Paleozoics in the rank 2s, Blue Eyes in the rank 8s, like I could literally just keep going on and on. But I don't even have to, because you can just see that at any point, if they're going to make any sort of Xyz play that threatens your field, you flip Dimensional Barrier, it's pretty much over. And then Pendulum monsters, same thing, with Metal Foes. If you're playing Odd Eyes Magicians or going up against like Odd Eyes Pepe or some weird variant like that, again, Dimensional Barrier is the only card that you need. So, basically, the thing is, like I said, a lot of people want to compare this card to Vanity's Emptiness. But Dimensional Barrier is so much better than Vanity's Emptiness for a few other reasons. First of all, it's not a continuous trap card that can actually be turned off. Like, there isn't really a card in the format currently, like people aren't maining Wiretap or Trap Stun or anything, and because of that, Dimensional Barrier is pretty much going to go off no matter what. You might have the opportunity, if you're maybe a Metalfoes player, to chain something like Full Metalfoes Fusion in response, but outside of that, there's not really too many instances where you're going to be able to chain something to Dimensional Barrier before you get fucked over by it. And the second thing is, too, not only does this prevent the special summoning of monsters, it also acts as a one-turn skill drain for those monsters as well. So being able to shut off their powerful effects is a huge boon to this card, and is something that Vanity's Emptiness doesn't do. So being able to shut off an entire field of Xyz monsters, or fusion monsters, being, you know, anything, if it's Metalfoes, ABC Dragon Buster, anything like that, is pretty fucking good. So, you know, Dimensional Barrier is an incredibly powerful card, and a lot of people would argue that it really is worth that $70 price tag that it currently sits at. But there are some drawbacks to the card as well, namely, and most importantly, it is a trap card. So if you're going second, if you lose that die roll, this card immediately loses basically half of its effectiveness, because your opponent's going to already have an established board. They're going to be so much further ahead of you that Dimensional Barrier is pretty much going to act as a blank card, and you're going to be wishing it was a different combo piece entirely, because it's not going to be helping you out in that board. More than likely, your opponent's just going to win. They might even be able to kill it before you even have a chance to activate it. So going first and having Dimensional Barrier really, really matters. And the second thing is, too, Dimensional Barrier does affect your cards as well, and that's something that you need to be aware of, because if you accidentally, you know, call one type, like if you call Xyz or Synchro or something, but you're also playing those types of monsters, if that could potentially open a window for your opponent to play in such a way that they can capitalize on the fact that you're affected by Dimensional Barrier as well. And that's kind of the same drawback that Vanity's Emptiness has. You know, if you flip it, then they have the ability to just like Regeki your board, and then you have no chance to special summon anything back if you have a whole board full of floaters. So overall, is Dimensional Barrier worth the price tag? I definitely think it's a card that's definitely very sought after, and it's an extremely powerful card. Probably one of the most powerful cards we've seen in a long time. But what's going to happen is it's really going to depend on how the format and the meta shifts and evolves around it. Are people going to maximize on this card and just play it in everything? Or are people going to just kind of go to it as a side deck option to ensure that when they go first, they have the best chance of having it, and that when they go second, they're not going to have any chance of drawing it at all? It really is going to depend on how the meta shifts and how the market's going to react accordingly to if this card's going to stay at that $70 price tag. I think it's definitely worth around the $40 to $50 range for sure. 70 might be a little bit exorbitantly high at the moment, but we do have YCS Anaheim only a couple weeks away, so that's definitely probably playing some role into that at the moment. But let me know down in the comments what you guys think about Dimensional Barrier as a whole. Do you think the card is worth it? Do you think the card is extremely powerful? Or do you think it's just all hype? So I really want to hear that down in the comments below. Be sure to like the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel for more awesome Yu-Gi-Oh content, and back me on Patreon, because just by pledging $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to bring you 4 to 5 days of Yu-Gi-Oh content every single month, week, month, something like that. A lot of fucking Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thank you guys so much again for all your support. We'll see you next time.